Hello, I'm Carmen. And if you had asked me just a few years ago to describe my life, I would have called it a fairy tale. Allow me to paint a picture for you. I was born into a family that was nothing short of wonderful. My father was a highly successful businessman, a self-made entrepreneur who built his empire from the ground up. He was the kind of man who lit up a room not just with his wealth, but with his infectious charisma and wisdom. My mother was equally incredible. A philanthropist known for her grace, elegance, and dedication to charitable causes. Then there was my sister, Lisa. Though confined to a wheelchair due to a congenital disability, her spirit soared higher than anyone I've ever known. Growing up in such an environment taught me that love and support were the true riches of life, a lesson that stayed with me into adulthood. You could say that finding love was never a pressing concern of mine. I believed it would come at the right time. And then I met Daniel. I remember the night vividly. It was at the wedding reception of a mutual friend. Daniel was across the room, talking and laughing with a group of people. The minute our eyes met, it felt like the world had paused. "Hey," he said, walking up to me with a smile that could melt hearts. "I'm Daniel. I couldn't help but notice you from across the room." "Hi, Daniel. I'm Carmen," I replied, feeling an instantaneous connection. "May I have this dance, Carmen?" Daniel extended his hand, and as cheesy as it sounds, it felt like a scene straight out of a romantic movie. "Of course," I said, putting my hand in his. As we danced, Daniel talked about his dreams and aspirations. He wasn't born into wealth or privilege. He was working 2 jobs while trying to start his own tech company. But what struck me the most was his passion for life and the humility with which he carried himself. "You're different, Carmen," he said as the night wore on. "You listen, really listen, and that's a rare quality." "So are you," I replied. "It's rare to meet someone who's so genuine." It was easy to fall in love with him. A year later, our wedding was the epitome of a fairy tale. A charming castle venue, elaborate floral arrangements, fairy lights twinkling in the evening sky, and most importantly, surrounded by people we loved. I remember standing at the altar looking into Daniel's eyes and thinking how lucky I was. "Do you, Carmen, take Daniel to be your lawfully wedded husband?" the minister asked. "I do," I said, my voice tinged with emotion. "And do you, Daniel, take Carmen to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do," Daniel responded, his eyes locked onto mine. It was a dream come true. Though Daniel was still in the process of finding himself, working long hours and facing the challenges of entrepreneurship, I was proud to stand by his side. Money was never the cornerstone of our relationship. I believed in us, in our future, and in the love that seemed strong enough to conquer anything. Little did I know, the castle that our fairy tale was built on had shaky foundations that would crumble and bring down everything I held dear. But that chapter was yet to come. For now, I was blissfully ignorant, happily ensconced in what I believed was an unbreakable love. Ah, how stories can change. The room was somber, filled with a heavy sense of grief as my father's lawyer read the will. I sat next to Lisa, holding her hand tightly as we listened. My father had divided his estate into numerous parts, designating funds for various charities, contributions to research institutions, and of course to his children. When the lawyer got to the part about the inheritance designated for Lisa and me, I felt a mix of relief and sorrow. $10 million had been left for me. After the reading, Lisa pulled me aside. Her eyes were red but steady, a look of resolve on her face. "Carmen, I don't want to take any of the money." "But why?" I asked, genuinely puzzled. "It's your right as much as it is mine." "You have a life to build, maybe a family someday." Lisa said softly, "I have medical costs, but they're already covered through insurance and trust funds. You should have it." I hugged her tightly, grateful yet burdened by the responsibility. "All right, if you insist," I said, my voice tinged with emotion. but know that whatever I have is also yours, always." Armed with the weight of this new financial responsibility, I returned home. I walked through the door, half expecting Daniel to greet me with a comforting hug to ask how I was holding up. Instead, he was sitting on the couch, an unrecognizable look on his face. "Did you get the money?" he asked, the moment I closed the door behind me. The question felt like a punch in the gut. There was an odd tension in his voice, a slight edge that I'd never heard before. My Daniel, who had been my emotional rock, who had always valued love and connection over material wealth, was asking about money. "Yes," I paused, but I told them to give it all to Lisa. "You did what?" His eyebrows arched, his expression inscrutable. "Lisa needed it more than me," I said, feeling a pit form in my stomach. "And it's not like we're struggling, Daniel. We have enough, and I have you. That should be all that matters." Daniel looked at me, his eyes searching my face for something I couldn't discern. He didn't say anything, just got up and walked towards our bedroom, leaving me standing in the living room, enveloped in a silence that screamed louder than any words. I thought about our vows, about the fairy tale wedding, and the love that was supposed to withstand all obstacles. It was the first time I questioned the strength of our foundation. As I stood there alone, the walls of our home seemed to close in on me, each square foot funded by my father's lifetime of work. Now my inheritance. An inheritance that suddenly felt like a ticking time bomb. Its clock set the moment I uttered the lie about giving it all to Lisa. Little did I know that this was just the beginning, that the man I had pledged my life to was about to reveal a side of himself that I had never seen and never thought existed. And just like that, the second chapter of my life was inked, not with the promise of endless love, but with the foreshadowing of heartbreak and betrayal. The atmosphere in the house was thick with tension in the days that followed. Daniel became more withdrawn, a stark contrast to the man who used to fill our home with laughter and love. He would leave early in the morning for meetings and return late at night, avoiding eye contact as if he couldn't bear to look at me. Finally, one evening, he broke the silence. "Carmen, we need to talk," he said, sitting on the opposite end of the dining table, creating both a literal and metaphorical distance between us. My heart sank. "Okay, let's talk," I said cautiously, my voice tinged with a vulnerability I couldn't hide. Daniel looked up, his eyes void of the warmth that used to make me feel like the most cherished person in the world. "I've been thinking a lot, and I've come to the conclusion that we should get a divorce." I was stunned, a sickening feeling settling into the pit of my stomach. "Why? Is this about the money? I thought we agreed that love was more important than wealth." Daniel sighed, a sound that felt like 1,000 nails on a chalkboard. "Carmen, let's be honest. I can't afford to be with someone who has nothing to her name, especially when that person had the opportunity to inherit millions and chose not to." Is that what this is about? Opportunity? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. What happened to "for better or worse"? What happened to love? He scoffed. "Love doesn't pay the bills, Carmen." "But we're not destitute, Daniel. We have a home. You have a job, and I was planning on going back to work soon," I protested, still holding on to the shred of hope that this could all be a terrible misunderstanding. "No," Daniel interrupted, his voice resolute. "I can't be with someone who isn't practical about money. I need to think about my future." The air grew colder with his words. "So, your future doesn't include me then?" I asked, fighting back tears. "Carmen, you made your choice when you gave away your inheritance. Now, I'm making mine." It felt like my heart was ripped out of my chest, stomped on, and handed back to me. The man I had believed was my forever was dismantling our life together because of an illusionary absence of wealth. "Fine," I said, the word laced with a finality that broke my own heart. "If that's what you want, then let's get a divorce." He nodded, his face showing no emotion, and left the room. I was left sitting at the table, awash in the deafening silence, my thoughts a hurricane of confusion and despair. And so, I found myself signing divorce papers, meticulously dividing our assets, our belongings, and most devastatingly, our life together. Daniel was quick to move out, almost as if he couldn't bear another minute in the house we'd once filled with dreams of a shared future. As I stood alone in what was now just my home, I realized the magnitude of the betrayal. Daniel had shattered my belief in love, trust, and most cruelly, in him. But life has a funny way of bringing things full circle, of setting up the dominoes just so they'd fall in a pattern you never saw coming. I didn't know it yet, but the stage was set for the next chapter, a chapter that would give me a chance to take back control, to rewrite my story in a way that would make even the most seasoned authors take note. But for now, I was merely a woman scorned, my fairy tale shattered, left with the pieces of a love that was never truly mine to begin with. A few months had passed since the divorce was finalized. I had taken some of the inheritance money and bought a new home, a fresh start, far away from the memories that had turned sour. My sister Lisa was aware of the ugly unraveling of my marriage, but had kept her opinions to herself, offering only love and support. One day, I received a call from her that broke through the monotonous rhythm of my newly single life. "Carmen, I'm getting married." Lisa's voice bubbled with joy through the phone. My heart swelled with happiness for her. "Lisa, that's wonderful news. Who's the lucky guy?" "You'll find out soon enough," she teased. "How soon can you come?" "As soon as you want me there," I replied, eager to celebrate something good, something pure, for a change. The wedding was beautiful, set in a lovely garden adorned with vibrant flowers and twinkling lights. Lisa looked radiant, glowing with a happiness that I felt she deserved more than anyone else. I was truly happy for her, but as I approached the altar to offer my congratulations, I froze. Standing beside her was Daniel. Lisa noticed my reaction, but mistook it for surprise rather than shock. "Surprise," she said, her eyes twinkling. "I guess I should have told you earlier, but I wanted it to be a secret." I mustered a smile, swallowing the knot of emotions that had suddenly lodged itself in my throat. "It's your day, Lisa, and I want nothing more than for you to be happy." Daniel avoided eye contact, but had the audacity to offer a cordial, "Hi, Carmen, you look great." I could only manage a curt nod. The ceremony proceeded, and as they exchanged vows, my mind raced. I watched my sister, the epitome of vulnerability and kindness, unite her life with a man I had known to be anything but those things. After the ceremony, Lisa pulled me aside. "Carmen, I hope you're okay with this. I love him and he loves me." "Do you trust him?" I asked, looking into her eyes. "With all my heart," she said, without hesitation. "Then that's all that matters," I replied, hugging her tightly, although a voice inside me screamed otherwise. "You're the best, Carmen," Lisa said, squeezing me back. "Just promise me one thing," I whispered, pulling away to look into her eyes. "Never lie to him about money or anything else. Lies corrode trust." Lisa looked puzzled, but nodded. Of course, why would I lie? The irony of her question was not lost on me, but I chose to keep my thoughts to myself. After all, Lisa had made her choice, just as I had made mine, and Daniel his. But the universe is a grand weaver of tales, and as fate would have it, my story was about to take a turn I never could have anticipated. With Daniel now legally, my brother-in-law, the next chapter of my life was almost ready to begin. One where the stakes were higher, the deceptions darker, and where karma was about to deal its hand in a game that none of us knew we were playing. After the wedding festivities had died down and the guests had trickled away, I found myself alone in a quiet corner of the garden. My emotions were a tangle of confusion, disbelief, and a gnawing sense of impending doom. I felt an arm wrap around my shoulder and turned to see Lisa, her eyes still sparkling with the joy of a newlywed. "Carmen, are you all right? You seemed a little distant during the reception," she said, her voice tinged with concern. "I'm okay, just a little tired," I replied, offering a half smile. Before either of us could say anything more, Daniel approached, his eyes meeting mine for the first time since the ceremony. "Carmen, may I talk to you for a moment?" he asked, the cordiality in his voice failing to mask the underlying tension. I looked at Lisa, who gave me a reassuring nod, and then followed Daniel to a more secluded part of the garden. "What is it?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. Daniel cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable. "Look, I want to clear the air. I didn't know you'd be so affected by me marrying Lisa." I chuckled bitterly. Affected? Why should I be? You're both adults, and you've made your choices. "Good," he said, visibly relieved, "because I want Lisa to be happy, and family drama is the last thing we need right now." Family drama. The words stung, but they also flipped a switch inside me. You want to talk about family drama? How about marrying into the family you just left? Don't you think that's a bit dramatic, even for you? Daniel sighed. "Carmen, I didn't plan for this to happen. But I'm committed to making it work with Lisa. She's an incredible woman, and she has something that you and I never had: financial stability." Ah, there it was. The issue that had torn apart our marriage, raising its ugly head again. "I see," I said, looking at him squarely. "Well, since we're clearing the air, there's something you should know." He raised an eyebrow. "What?" "Lisa is disabled, as you know. Medical costs, life expenses, they all add up, and she declined the inheritance from our father's estate." For a moment, Daniel's face went white, as if he'd seen a ghost. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying, Daniel, that Lisa is as much a beggar as you accused me of being. She didn't take the inheritance. I lied. I took the entire $10 million. The look on Daniel's face was priceless. Shock, disbelief, and then realization. Realization that he had played himself, that his greed had cost him not one, but two fortunes. The mask had slipped, and standing before me was not the man I fell in love with, but a stranger. A man willing to trample over anyone for the sake of money. "Carmen, why didn't you tell me this before?" he finally stammered. "Why? Would it have made a difference? Would you have stayed if you knew I was a millionaire?" His silence was all the answer I needed. I turned to walk away, but stopped to deliver my parting words. "You see, Daniel, you were right about one thing. Lies do corrode trust, but it was your lies to yourself about what really mattered that corroded our marriage." I walked back to Lisa, my heart lighter than it had been in months. The curtains had fallen, the actors in this twisted play had taken their final bows, and the stage was set for the final chapter. One where I would regain control of my narrative with honesty and integrity as my allies. I had been both the deceived and the deceiver, but it was time to put an end to this cycle. The final chapter was yet to be written, and it was going to be a reckoning. The days that followed Lisa's wedding were a strange blend of relief and apprehension. I had unveiled Daniel's greed to him, and while it gave me a sense of closure, it also left me anxious about Lisa's future. Yet, as the saying goes, the truth has a way of revealing itself, often when you least expect it. It was a week after the wedding, and Lisa had invited me over for dinner. As I walked into their home, I sensed an uncomfortable tension hanging in the air. Lisa greeted me with a smile but seemed subdued. Daniel was conspicuously absent from the room. "Carmen, can you help me set the table?" Lisa asked, her voice softer than usual. "Of course," I replied, following her into the kitchen. As we arranged the dishes and utensils, I couldn't help but notice that Lisa seemed distracted. Finally, I decided to address the elephant in the room. "Is everything okay, Lisa? You seem a bit off." Lisa sighed and set down the serving spoon she was holding. "It's Daniel," she said. "He's been acting strange ever since we got married. He's distant, withdrawn. It's like he's a completely different person." I felt a knot tighten in my stomach but said nothing. Lisa continued, "And the weirdest thing is he keeps asking about the inheritance, about whether I received any money from Dad's estate." The moment had come. My heart raced as I realized what I had to do. "Lisa, there's something you should know," I began cautiously. "Something I should have told you sooner." Daniel chose that exact moment to walk into the kitchen. "Told her what, Carmen?" Our eyes met, and a heavy silence filled the room. Finally, I spoke. "Lisa, I lied to you and to Daniel. You didn't receive the inheritance because you refused it, remember? I received the entire $10 million. Lisa's eyes widened in disbelief. "Why would you lie about that, Carmen?" Before I could answer, Daniel interjected. "So you lied to us both, Carmen." Ignoring him, I turned to Lisa. "I lied to protect myself at first, but then I realized the lie could protect you too. Daniel isn't who you think he is, Lisa. He left me because he thought I was penniless." "Is that true, Daniel?" Lisa asked, her eyes filling with tears. Daniel looked from me to Lisa, his face changing colors, eventually settling on a shade of pale, cold gray. A basement-faced revelation, if ever there was one. I didn't know she had the money," he stammered, failing to answer Lisa's question directly. Lisa turned to me, her eyes searching for something. "Is it revenge, Carmen? Are you trying to ruin my marriage for revenge?" "No, Lisa. I'm doing this to save you. To save you from making the same mistake I did. You deserve better." There was a moment of heavy silence. The weight of years of lies and deceptions hanging in the air, crushing us under its unbearable heaviness. Finally, Lisa spoke. "Daniel, I think it's best if you leave," she said, her voice tinged with a sadness that broke my heart. "But Lisa—" "No," she cut him off, her voice firm. "I trusted you, and you broke that trust." Daniel looked defeated, his eyes meeting mine for a fleeting second before he turned and left the room. As he walked away, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief wash over me. A chapter had closed, and though the ending was bitter, it was